Dawood or Harun. And if you guys can just turn that. No, sorry. This one off. Yes. Yes, turn. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wal aqibatu lil muttaqin was salatu was salamu ala sayyidil anbiya'i wal mursalin. Alhamdulillah, today Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has brought us to the last day. Inshallah, that does not mean this should be the end of our learning. The amount we have covered is requires a lot more detail and explanation. Hopefully, inshallah, in the future we can even do it more detailed, a little bit more slower, without rushing it through as much as we did this time. Nevertheless, today we'll have more or less 4 parts that we'll be discussing, inshallah. Part number 1 will be just to finish off what we were discussing yesterday, the wajibat of Salah, and then what happens if a person leaves out a wajib. Thereafter, we'll be discussing the prayer of Musafir, and the makruhat of Salah and the mufsidat of Salah. Makruhat, things that are disliked in Salah, and mufsidat, those things which break Salah and invalidate the prayer. So as we know, hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam tells us, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالْخَوَاتِيمِ, the actions are judged by their ends. So inshallah, all of us who are here, alhamdulillah subhanahu has brought us all the way till the end. Let us try our best, inshallah, to be as attentive as possible. And inshallah, we make dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants us the fullest benefit, inshallah. Apologize for this. What just happened? Bismillah. Yes, it's back. So yesterday pretty much we had covered all the wajibat which are generally found irrespective of the type of prayer you're praying. So whether you're praying Farz Salah, we're praying Sunnah Salah, whether you're praying Witr Salah, we're praying Taraweeh Salah, those are the wajibat that will be dominantly found in all the salawat. With the exception of the Qa'da Ula, the Qa'da Ula will only be found in salawat which are more than 2 rak'ah. Any salah which is 2 rak'ahs, then obviously is nothing less than 2 rak'ahs, then will not contain the Qa'da Ula. Hereafter, there are some specific wajibat which are found in very specific types of salawat. One of them is Witr Salah. Witr Salah, according to the dominant view in the Hanafi madhab, is wajib. What is it? Wajib. Which means that if a person misses it, he will have to make it up. And the Witr Salah, according to Hanafi madhab, again, is performed throughout the entire year. And in the month of Ramadan is performed in Jama'ah. In the month of Ramadan, it is permissible to be performed in Jama'ah as long as it is joined to the Taraweeh Salah. So you pray Taraweeh Salah, then after Taraweeh Salah, then you join on the Witr Salah in the congregation. It is permitted. It is not necessary. A person asks, which one is better? Is it better for me to read it at the end with my Tahajjud Salah, or is it better for me to perform it with Taraweeh Salah? I would say, from the indications we find from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, both are on equal level. Why? Because each one Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has emphasized in one place, and thus they're on equal as all your preference. If a person, however, a person feels, I probably won't wake up for tahajjud, or there's a high chance I will not wake up in time to ensure my witr salah is performed in time, and it's definitely better for you to perform it with Taraweeh Salah. Listen, that ensures in the month of Ramadan you do not miss out such an essential prayer. On the other hand, if you are habitual of getting up for Taraweeh, Witr Salah at the end of the night, and you don't usually ever miss it, then to postpone it till that time, is completely fine. And even if you miss it, Allah will actually reward you for performing at that time. Why? Because you have taken every measure and you are usually habitual of getting up at that time and not missing it. So once in a while, if it happens, not due to your own negligence, but because Allah had kept more sleep for you that night, then inshallah you will still be rewarded for it. Now within that, so witr salah, according to Hanafi madhab, we have something called the qunut. The qunut and the Hanafi madhab is performed before the ruku'. So in the third rak'ah, you will read Surah Fatiha, an additional surah, and then you will raise your hand, as it says, raise your hand, lift your hands to the shoulder, level or higher. Say takbir, Allahu Akbar as you lift your hand. Retie your hands on your navel. Recite the qunut dua, which is Allahumma inna nasta'inuka. Read with me. Allahumma inna nasta'inuka wa nastaghfiruka wa nu'minu bika wa natawakkalu alayka wa nuthni alayka al-khayr wa nashkuruka wa la nakfuruka wa nakhla'u wa natruku man yafjuruk. Allahumma iyyaka na'budu wa laka nasjudu wa ilayka nas'a wa nahfidu wa narju rahmatak wa nakhsha 'adhabak inna 'adhabaka bil kuffari mulhiq. Now some variations will add kullah, for example, that all good is from you instead of just good is from you. And some of them will have the extra word of the one astahdik, that we see guidance from you. And those variations are valid, even though found in lesser narration. This narration is found dominantly in all of them. Now, the other madhahib have a different qunut, which they recite only in month of Ramadan, which is Allahumma hadina fi man hadayt wa afina fi man afayt wa tawaffana fi man tawaffayt, etc. So in which we the Hanafis recite in Salat al-Fajr at the time of any great calamity. So let's say there's a war, etc. Or there is suffering going on, there's a flood, and thus we use that, what's called a qunutun nazila. That means the dua to be recited at the time of any great calamity. So that's usually done in Salatul Fajr. While it is not prohibited in other salawat, a person could do it in Maghrib and Isha, is highly unrecommended according to the Hanafi school of thought to be done in other salawat besides the Fajr salah. And the main reason for that, because at the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when the great calamity happened, when a certain group of Sahaba radiyallahu anhum, is called the calamity of Bi'r Ma'una, where Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam had sent a group of the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum as teachers to a certain tribe, and instead when they got there, or rather on the way, this tribe had led them into an ambush, killing a large group of Sahaba radiyallahu anhum who were very, very learned. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam on that occasion, every single day, till the calamity, or rather till those tribes were taken care of who had kind of planned and plotted this entire thing, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam recited Nazila every single morning till that ended. And thus, that's where the Hanafi school of thought takes it from, that it is only to be recited in when Nazila happens at the time of Fajr. Nevertheless, in Salatul Witr, every single day, this qunut is called Qunutul Witr. Now, a lot of us as Desi people call it Dua Qunut, which doesn't really make sense. Dua means qunut and qunut means dua. It's two synonymous words for each other. So when you say Dua Qunut, you're saying dua, which really doesn't make sense in Arabic language. But nevertheless, as long as you understand what it means, alhamdulillah, right? So it's usually called Qunutul Witr, the dua of the Witr Salah, right? So again, what is the method? In the third rak'ah, you'll raise your hands to say Allahu Akbar, put it down, retie your hands, recite qunut, and then after that, and then continue the ruku'. The witr prayer is the final voluntary prayer of the night. Now, on normal days, ideally, it should be left till the last prayer. However, like I mentioned, if a person is fearful that he will not wake up in time, then he should perform it. Now, another question that arises, because a hadith of Rasulullah mentions that it should be the last prayer performed, there are a few scholars, especially in the other madhahib, who are of the opinion that if a person wakes up in the middle of the night to pray tahajjud, then their witr actually gets cancelled. And thus they will have to repeat the witr. This is not the view in the Hanafi school of thought. In the Hanafi school of thought, you do not need to repeat that witr salah. Once the witr salah is performed, it is done. You can pray tahajjud after that. You can pray extra tarawih. If you miss some parts of tarawih after that, no issues. You do not have to repeat the witr salah. However, the witr salah must be performed after Salatul Isha. Must be performed after Salatul Isha. If you by chance you prayed Isha Salah and for some reason the Isha Salah was invalid, was what? Invalid. And then you perform Witr Salah, now you will have to repeat the Witr Salah according to the dominant view in the Hanafi madhab. There are a few scholars say that you don't, but the dominant view in the Hanafi madhab is that you'll have to repeat the Witr Salah, because the condition for Witr Salah is that it must be after Isha Salah. Yes? Listen. So, summarize everything. Listen. Witr Salah must be after Isha Salah. It is recommended it should be last Salah performed. However, if it is performed the earlier time, there's nothing wrong. Other Salawat can be performed after Witr Salah, with the exception of Isha Salah. If it was not performed, then the Witr Salah is not valid. Yes? Carrying on to the next part. The main part being Qunutul Witr. What is the main part? The Takbir and the Qunutul Witr. Takbir and the Qunutul Witr. For Qunut, both of these are wajib. What are they? Both of these are wajib. This is the main point of this whole section. The dua of Qunut, the dua in Witr Salah and the Takbir to start the Qunut, both of them are wajib. Now another one particularly to a specific Salah, which is Eid Salah. The extra Takbirat in the Eid Salah are also all wajib. They are all wajib. Now, there is total of 3 in the, according to Hanafi school. Now, understand all the variations that we have. The narration that all the madhahib use are the same narrations. Are the same narration, which is that Rasulullah ﷺ performed 6 extra takbirs. However, each madhab views it slightly differently. The Hanafi school of thought says 6 extra takbir distributed between 2 rakats. The other madhahib say, the Shafi'i madhab for example, they do 6 and 6. A total of 12. So say 6 total takbir, but exclusive to each rak'ah separately. Listen. The Maliki madhab, they say total of 13 extra takbirs. Listen. So they say 6 in the first rak'ah, listen, and then 6 in the second rak'ah, listen. Now, because you had the takbiratul tahrima in the first rak'ah, in attachment with the 6, you do 1 extra takbir in the second rak'ah as well, making a total 7 and 7 almost, and so to say. And that's how they come to the different numbers, again, concluding, taking from the same hadith. The way we do it, listen, is in the beginning of the first rak'ah, after takbiratul tahrima, we will say 3 Allahu Akbars, raising our hand each time. The raising of the hands is sunnah. The saying of the takbir is wajib. So saying of the takbir is wajib. The raising of the hands is sunnah. And the second rak'ah, you will recite Surah Fatiha, recite the extra surah, then 3 extra takbirs, and after the 3 takbirs, on the 4th takbir, you'll go to ruku'. That's how the Hanafi madhab does it. However, something to understand. If a person forgets to do it in the beginning of the first rak'ah, he is allowed to do it at the end of the first rak'ah. Are you guys with me? If a person forgets to do it completely in the first rak'ah, he may do all 6 where? In the second rak'ah. Just like the sajda we discussed yesterday. You guys remember? If a person misses on the first rak'ah, you just do the extra sajda in the second rak'ah. Similar fashion, you can carry it on. However, we will discuss something about sajda sahwa at the Eid Salah. Yes, we'll get to questions in just a moment. Now, when any person misses any of the wajibat that we have discussed so far, yesterday and today, the ones that are specific to certain prayers and the ones unspecific to certain prayers, this will necessitate a sajda to sahu. Sajda to sahu. That means a sajda prostration of forgetfulness. That means I forgetfully, remember keyword, sahu means forgetfulness. What does sahu mean? Forgetfulness. And mistakenly as well counts on that, but not on purpose. There is no sajda to sahu for a person purposefully omitting a wajib. In that case, it will be just like leaving out a fard. The salah will become invalid. Once again, a person who omits a wajib on purpose, then that salah will have to repeat it. There is no sajda to sahwa for omitting a wajib on purpose, right? Now, Another reason for sajdatul sahw, delaying a wajib or fard action, delaying it. So for example, I'm supposed to be going from one posture to another posture. I described yesterday, sometimes a person reads at-tahiyyat and he kind of zones out. And he's just sitting there. If he is sitting there for the amount of 3 subhanallah, which is regarded as a rukn, then a person will have to do sajdatul sahw. In the same way, in the Shafi'i madhab, after standing up from ruku' and going to the third rak'ah, sorry, not what am I saying? In the second rak'ah or the fourth rak'ah, going from sajda into standing posture. From sajda into standing posture, they are supposed to sit down momentarily. They call it qa'datul istiraha, or jalsatul istiraha, where they must sit there for maybe around the amount of a single subhanallah, and then they get up. So now, in their madhab, it is actually necessary for them to do that. In our madhab, we are prohibited from doing that. That will count as adding extra, just sitting there for no reason. However, for it to become a means of sajdatul sahw, a person will have to sit for the extent of 3 subhanallah. The extent of 3 subhanallah. Or to the extent that a person says a complete sentence, which is Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Right? Now, wrong sequence of actions. We explained this already. If a person moves parts of the salah around because he forgot to do it earlier and he does it later on, sajda out the first rak'ah and he makes it up in the third rak'ah. Or for example, he's supposed to recite Surah Al-Fatiha in the first 2 rak'ahs, he instead does it in the third or the fourth rak'ah. All those will constitute that he has to do sajdatul sahw. There's one instant when sajdatul sahw can actually be left out despite it being necessary. That is, let's look at it. When performing, it would cause more confusion due to large congregation. Example, the Eid prayer, or in the same manner, Jum'ah prayer, right? So you're performing Eid salah or the Jum'ah prayer, and you did something which would necessitate sajdatul sahw. But in that case, you will possibly cause more confusion. In that case, you leave out the sajdatul sahw, especially if it is something only known to the imam. Listen, let's say the imam leading the salah made a mistake which is not known to anyone else. Listen, now everyone is thinking, no one is ready for it. No one is ready for it. In a case where you make a mistake where everyone understood, hey, what happened over there? The imam made a mistake. Then everyone is already expecting what? Expecting to make a sajdatul sahw. Then even if you make sajdatul sahw, it should not be that big of a problem. But in the case only you know, let's say, listen, you accidentally started reading a certain extra thing, or you messed up the qira'ah or something while you were reading. In that case, you should especially leave it out. Why? Because you'll be destroying people's salah rather than fixing the salah itself. How to perform sajdatul sahw. Now, remember, sajdatul sahw in the different madhahib, some are slightly different, even though in essence they're all the same. In essence, all the madhab agree to the fact that there's 2 extra sajdas. How many? Two extra sajdas to be added at the end of salah. Now, the Hanafi school of thought, as I explained previously when we discussed the arkan of salah, we discussed the last one or second to last one was al-qa'datul akhira. Does everyone remember that? Al-qa'datul akhira, the last sitting. What did we say about al-qa'datul akhira? According to Hanafi madhab, it must be the last posture in prayer before salam. It must be the last posture in prayer before the salam. So if anything else is added on, then that must be repeated once again. That must be repeated once again. And that is why our methodology is, we'll sit for at-tahiyyat, and then we'll say salam once to the right. Salam once to the right, which is sunnah. Which is what? Sunnah. It is not necessary. If a person doesn't do it, it is still valid. Then, after saying salam once to the right, you will go down, do 2 sajdas, 2 normal sujood. And then you'll get back up and recite tahiyyat, durud Ibrahim, and the additional supplications, and then you will complete your salam right and then to the left, and that's how we'll complete. You may find, if you're reading behind a Shafi'i imam, what he will do most likely is he will do the 2 sajdas and then he will just end the prayer. And also before it, he will possibly, most likely read that tahiyyat, durud Ibrahim, and the dua, and just add on the 2 sajdas at the end without the salam. So that's what most likely he will do. The other madhahib have even more explanation as to how to do it. They have combinations of both. We're not going to discuss that today. Yes. So one more. Yes. That brings us to the end of the Yes. If the mistake was intentional, that means the person, like I mentioned earlier, such as sahwa does not compensate for it, the prayer must be repeated within the time. This is important. The prayer must be... sorry, there's two different sentences over here that may cause confusion. Please understand, if you're looking at the slide, don't get confused. If a person does not do sajda to sahwa when he's supposed to do sajda to sahwa, if a person does not do sajda to sahwa when he was supposed to do sajda to sahwa, typical example, a person said, does ruku', and for some reason, instead of getting up from ruku', what does he do? He goes straight into sajda. Because the standing up between the ruku' and the sajda is what? Is wajib. He has left out a wajib. So it's necessary for him to do a sajda to sahwa. And by the time he gets to the end of the salah, he forgot he was supposed to do sajda to sahwa. Right? Now, he is supposed to repeat that salah within the salah time, within the same salah time. If the salah time expires before he does so, now it is recommended, not necessary. Now it's recommended, not necessary. Everyone, yes, with me? It is recommended, not necessary. Basically, the time period for which a person makes up the salah which was deficient, not broken, but deficient, that means it was missed out a wajib, is till the end of the salah time. Thereafter, is recommended that they make it up. It's not necessary that they make it up. However, it is a means of sin, so a person should make tawbah and a person should make that up. Yes, questions with regard to this specific part, yes. Okay, Jazakallah khairan. That's a very, very important question that I didn't cover, yes. What is the question is, how do we correct the imam? So if it is the correction in qira'ah, if it's correction in qira'ah, then ideally, if the imam has already recited the amount that is required for salah to be valid, which is how much? 3 small verses, 1 large verse, then there is no correction needed from the back. There is no correction needed from that back. And if no one corrects, the imam has 2 choices. Either imam jumps to another part of the Quran, or he goes into ruku'. Because the salah is completely valid, no one is required or recommended to actually correct the imam. However, everyone does have the choice to correct the imam if they choose to do so, and especially sometimes if you can see the imam is actually waiting for a correction. That's number 1, right? Now, ideally, in that case, in Taraweeh Salah, there's usually appointed correctors, but other than that, there isn't. We should try our best to be audible and to say certain amount of verse where it's clear to the imam what to go for. If you tell him one word, might just be stuck even more and stuck, and just going through like multiple stucks, which kind is not really beneficial. So say the amount that is we think is and if that means saying the verse from the beginning again, please do so. Also, now this happens to me as leading the salah as well, and is that I should be cognizant of if things not coming right, that I should go into ruku' and carrying on with salah instead of trying to force the issue. That's something that we should try to do. Now, if it is any other part of the salah, for example, a posture change, this is where knowing what is wajib becomes very, very important. If a person missed a wajib and is carrying on to the next posture, now, I cannot think of a situation where the next posture is another wajib. Usually, between 2 fard is a wajib, and you skip out into the next wajib. Now, if a person skips out into the next wajib, next fard or the next posture, and they are skipping a what? A wajib or a fard, which could be made up at a later stage, then I should say, if the person is supposed to be going up and instead he's going down, I should say Allahu Akbar to tell him go up. To make him go up. Why? Because Allahu Akbar means what? Allah is great. So go up. Listen. And if he's going up instant and he's supposed to be going down, I should say Subhanallah to tell him, listen, Allah is pure from all deficiencies. Go down. You're deficient, so go down. So Allahu Akbar to tell him to go up, and Subhanallah to go down. If the imam is already past a certain stage of posture, let's say he's supposed to be sitting, but instead he already stood up, or he's closer to standing up, it's recommended for the imam to continue and skip the posture and just do sajda to sahwa at the end. And the people are required to follow the imam. The people are required to follow the imam. This is where, listen, if you are the other madhahib will say, no, that a person should sit and make that posture momentarily and then follow the imam so that their part is taken care of. Yes. Jazakallah khairan. Yes. If a person makes such a mistake that a meaning has changed, if we understand is a drastic change in meaning, yes, then we should interrupt right away. We should interrupt right away and correct him. Jazakallah khairan for bringing that point. We should interrupt that right away and correct that. Yes. Okay, Jazakallah. After the tashahud. Yes. Very good. So, if a person is supposed to be sitting for the last tashahud, or he accidentally gets up from the last tashahud for a fifth rak'ah, in a 4 rak'ah salah for example, in that case, then everyone should say subhanallah and make him sit. And make him sit means that say subhanallah enough times to tell him that, you know what, he needs to sit. Why? Because there is no other posture after this. This is the end of salah. A person may, not recommended, a person may, if it is the end of salah, if it is the end of salah, a person may even say assalamu alaikum to remind the imam. A person may even say assalamu alaikum to remind the imam. However, very important, if a person the imam gets up for the fifth rak'ah, imam gets up for a fifth rak'ah, after having sat for the tashahud amount already, after having sat for how much? Tashahud amount already, then he gets up, and no matter what we're telling him, he is not sitting, then we are permitted to say salam and end our salah. We are permitted to say salam and end our salah. Yes. Yes. That. Yes. 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 I'm gonna repeat it. So because ladies are listening too. Okay. So if a person praying individually gets up for the third rak'ah or the fifth rak'ah, depending on the type of salah he's performing, or in the maghrib, for example, for the fourth rak'ah. So in all those cases, and he is performing salah by himself, and there's no one behind him, so no one's reminding him, and he remembers, as long as he has not done the first sajda of that rak'ah, as long he has not done the first sajda of that new additional rak'ah, he will come back to the sitting posture, do sajda to sahwa and end the salah. Once he has done the sajda of the first rak'ah, the first sajda of the first rak'ah, now he should add on an extra one and make it 2 more. That means continue the even numbers and end the salah with the sajda to sahwa at the end. Yes, so once again, I'm going to repeat this one more time, right? If a person gets up for the third rak'ah, which is not part of the salah, that means the 2 rak'ah salah, or the fifth rak'ah and the 4 rak'ah salah, and he remembers, as long as he remembers before he does the sajda of that rak'ah, then he will come back to the sitting posture and he will do sajda to sahwa and end the salah. However, if he has already done the sajda of that rak'ah, he'll add on additional rak'ah, which will become the 4th rak'ah or the 6th rak'ah, and then he will do sajda to sahwa at the end and complete the salah. So 4 rak'ahs or 2 rak'ahs will become fard, and the additional 2 will become nafil. Yes. Ask. Mhm. If he has already done tashahhud, then no. Yes, if he has already done tashahhud, he will go straight into sajdat al-sahw. Sajdat al-sahw. Because he's already done tashahhud. That is the requirement. But if he has not done sajdat, for example, after the 4th rak'ah, he stood up directly to the 5th rak'ah. In that case, he will do tashahhud. Why? Because that's a rukn of salah. And then he will have to do sajdat al-sahw and then do the rukn again. Tashahhud again, yes. Yes. Yes, continue. Same thing will apply. So in that case it will be a total of 5 rak'ats. 3 salah will go towards maghrib and 2 will go towards yes. Then yes, we'll always add on 2s. We'll add on. The extras must always be in sets of 2s. Yes. Let me see. There's some questions coming here. Let me give them a chance to. Okay, there's one from yesterday that I'm going to cover at the end, inshallah. And should one touch earlobes while saying Allahu Akbar? It's not necessary. If it does, alhamdulillah. If it doesn't, it's also alhamdulillah. The point is, it has to be either in line with the ears, between the ears and the shoulder, or at least in line with the shoulders. That is required. Other than that, touching the ears itself is not necessary, nor is it prohibited. Should Bismillah be revised before Surah Fatiha and again before starting a different surah? Yes, it should be recited Surah Fatiha as well as a different surah. However, if it is from the middle of the surah, it is not required, nor is it necessarily recommended. If a person does it, is good. If person doesn't do it, it's still fine. Is it permissible to make du'as during Farz Salah Sujood after saying Subhana Rabbiyal A'la? Either Quran du'as or other Sunnah du'as in your own language. In your own language, no. In your own language, no. However, in other Quranic du'as and du'as from the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam are permitted. Are permitted. However, in Farz Salah, in the Hanafi school of thought, is recommended we keep it to the minimum. We keep it to the most. What Rasulullah used to do it most of the time. And in Nafil Salah, then the additional should be added on. In congregational Farad Salah, can one spend more time even after Imam has already done ruku', sujood, and tashahhud, etc.? According to Hanafi school of thought, we're supposed to be as close to the Imam as possible. This is called muqarana. That means as if we are simultaneous with the Imam. We're supposed to be simultaneous with the Imam, as close as possible without preceding the Imam. Number 5, I have observed that particularly during Taraweeh, Imam spends very less time in tashahhud. Can one just stop with at-tahiyyat and finish the salah without reciting durood and other Muslim du'as? No, this is not recommended at all. Rather, a person should recite the entire thing. I believe personally, someone else asked the same thing the other day. I believe people just read super fast. The Imams tend to read much faster, not necessarily leave it out. But if someone does, I don't know. Yes. Right way of Jum'ah Salah. Right way of Jum'ah Salah. We will not be talking about the Jum'ah Salah in this session. We'll be skipping that this time. Is there Sunnah before Jum'ah, after Jum'ah? Okay. Role for doing wearing socks. We'll also, unfortunately, this time will not be covering the khuffain. Inshallah, in some future time, we'll be covering the khuffain. When is it permissible? While only traveling, when sick, or any time? Okay. When to say thana when joining in the middle of salah. When to say thana when joining in the middle of salah. The methodology of completing for a person who comes late in the Hanafi school of thought is the first rak'ah that you missed. The first makeup rak'ah. So after saying Imam says salam, you get up. That will be your first rak'ah that you missed. That will be your first rak'ah that you missed. So whatever you would have recited in the first rak'ah will all be recited in this rak'ah they will be making up after the Imam has said salam. So let's say in Dhuhr Salah, you missed the first rak'ah. So you read perform 3 rakats with the Imam. So when the Imam said salam, you got up. What you are not performing your 4th rak'ah, you are performing your 1st rak'ah. So you will recite Thana, you will recite A'udhu Billah, you read Bismillah, you will recite Surah Fatiha, and you will recite the additional surah. Yes. That is correct. Yes. The question is, let's a muqtadi makes his own mistake. Then after he is okay, a muqtadi makes a mistake. Now, muqtadi, jazakallah khairan. Muqtadi is a person praying behind the Imam. So, a person praying behind the Imam, if he makes a mistake while he is behind the Imam, he is absolved of it. He is absolved of it. As long it is not something that is a rukn. As long it's not something that is a rukn. So if it is rukn, his salah is invalid. Then he has to restart the salah. However, if it's a wajib, it's good to go. It's fine. Now, if that person praying behind the Imam had joined the Imam late, and he makes a mistake within the part that he's making up. Same example I gave of Dhuhr Salah. Person missed his 1st rak'ah. So when he gets up after the Imam says salam, he's making up his 1st rak'ah. In that he makes a mistake, he will have to do his own sajdatul sahw. He will have to do his own sajdatul sahw. However, if he had made a mistake behind the Imam, according to Hanafi school of thought, he doesn't have to make a sajdatul sahw on his own. Now, what if I missed reading qunut and went to ruku and sajda and witr? Do I need to repeat the witr? No, you do not need to repeat the witr. As we mentioned, the qunut as well as the Allahu Akbar to start the qunut are both wajib. Thus, you will just do sajdatul sahw at the end of the witr salah, and that will make up for that. In witr salah, can I read any Arabic dua instead of dua qunut if I don't remember it properly? In the Hanafi madhab, as I said, it is wajib. The only excuses you have is you haven't had sufficient time to learn it. If you had sufficient time and you were aware of it, let's say another possibility is you grew up in a place where you were not taught the qunut of witr. In that case, you'll be absolved. But as soon as you get the knowledge, now it is necessary for you to implement that knowledge. In that case, till you learn it, you will read رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ, or any such dua until you learn it. However, leaving out the dua intentionally or out of laziness will be sinful. Yes. One second, there was a question here. Yes. Jazakallah khairan. Yes, if a person accidentally says salam with the Imam, even though he has a missed rak'ah left which he has to make up, that will necessitate a sajdatul sahw on him as an individual. Yes, one person before you. One salam or 2 salams. Yes, that is correct. Yes. Yes. Yes, in the Hanafi madhab, because we say that witr salah is wajib, according to the Muftī opinion, that means the preferred opinion of the madhab, then you will have to, there's qada for it also. There is no qada for sunnah, and there is no qada for nawafil, but there is qada for fard and wajib. Yes. Yes. Yes, it is recommended that we wait for the Imam to do both salams. It is recommended that we wait for the Imam to do both salams. However, it is permissible to get up after the first salam. It is recommended to stay for both salams. Yes. That's the whole point. That's why it's recommended. Yes. Yes. He was asking first. Yes. Sorry, yes, uncle. No. Sallallahu
pointed out something that we missed. So, yes, how that happened. We already saw, somebody pointed out. That was the word. Somebody pointed out, and then he just raised the head.
No, he got up and completed. Yes.
Is that something we could explain? That even when after I went Salam on both sides, I can do sujood.
No. What do you call it? So now when we go back to a hadith of, yes, yes, when you go back to a hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we will find many differences, and that's why we have the fuqaha to iron out all these differences and allow us to show us how to navigate these differences that we find a hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, keeping that in mind, in the Hanafi school of thought, the way we navigate this particular narration. Now, what is the narration the uncle mentioned? That Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam had completed salah, and there, according to a narration, there seems to have been a conversation between Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam actually spoke. And yet Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam as if went back into the mode of salah and did sajdat al-sahwa and made up for the mistake that was made. Now the question becomes that normally the Hanafi stance is that if you spoke or you turned your chest away from the Qibla, then you are not allowed to do so anymore. Which apparently seems to be in contradiction to this specific narration, but that is due to other narrations existing which indicate that talking and turning away from the Qibla will necessitate that the salah is terminated, and this termination does not allow us to continue. Now there's a whole discussion about which narration to be taken, and there's different scholars in different madhahib have different standards how to give preference one over other, which is extremely detailed discussion in itself. Yes, if a person has said salam both sides and his chest has turned away from the Qibla, or he has spoken something that is not the dua nor from the Quran, then in that case, that means just normal speech, or spoken to someone else, replied to someone else, in that case then they will have to repeat that salah. Again, I'm just going to add on something to that. This is with regard to sajdat sahw. Or if a person, let's say, like the question was asked, a person says both salam, he's just sitting there, and then he just quickly realizes, hey, I missed the rak'ah. As long he is not turned away from the Qibla, nor has he spoken to anyone or made a statement which is just normal human statement, he is permitted to get up and continue that part that he has missed and then make sajdat al-sahwa at the end. Was that the question? Or, okay, let me just get back to Miss. No. So in the Hanafi school of thought, in the Hanafi school of thought, the Imam's intention. Okay, Jazakallah khairan. Let me just. The question is, if a person is performing Maghrib Salah, and if the person wants to perform Maghrib Salah, which is Qada, and the Imam is currently performing Isha Salah, can the person who wants to perform his Qada Maghrib Salah pray behind the Imam who is performing Isha Salah? Then in the Hanafi school of thought, the Imam's intention and the Muqtadi's intention have to match. That means both of them have to pray the same Salah. The only time it is permitted for it not to match is if the Muqtadi, that means the person praying in behind the Imam, his intention is lower than the Imam's intention. What does lower mean? That both of them cannot be fard. So let's say the Imam is praying Fard Salah, Isha, and let's say the Muqtadi, person praying behind, has already performed his Isha. He can make niyat of Nafil, which is a lower standard, and pray behind the Imam. However, those Salah have to be, number one, always an even number. So that cannot be done in Maghrib Salah. Number two, there has to be that Salah after which Salah, Nafil Salah, is not prohibited. For example, after Fajr Salah, Nafil Salah is prohibited. So if you have already done your Farz Salah, you cannot join the Imam for a Nafil Salah, because then you're praying after your Farz Salah. Same thing after Salatul Asr. There is no nafil salah permitted. Then in that case, a person after having performed his own Asr salah cannot join the Imam for a nafil salah with the Imam. Last but not least, in the Hanafi madhab, a person of a higher level of intention cannot be praying behind a person has a lower level of intention. Example of it, the Imam is praying witr salah, and a person hasn't prayed Maghrib, he cannot pray his Maghrib salah behind the Imam performing witr salah. In the same way, Imam is performing Taraweeh salah. A person has missed that day's Fajr salah. He cannot pray his 2 rakats of Fajr salah behind the Imam leading Taraweeh salah. Why? Because Fajr is higher than the Taraweeh salah. So either or Isha salah, yes, but that's Isha Jama'ah. Yeah, Taraweeh started. That one, yes. Yeah. Also, yes. The reason I did not join that at all, understand, whoever said Isha Salah, because 4 and 2 don't match. They also have to match in the terms of rak'ahs that they are be performing. Yes. 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 Okay. Last question over here. Then we still have, remember, we still have 4 more sections to cover today, guys. If I missed the second rak'ah and fourth rak'ah in, okay, I'm going to read this question in witr salah. Can I read any? Okay. If I missed the second rak'ah and fourth rak'ah in 4 rak'ah salah, should we do such as so, or do we have to repeat the whole salah? I apologize. Whoever asked this question, if you can re-ask this question a little bit more clear. I'm reading this question. If I missed a second rak'ah, that means you prayed the first rak'ah. Did you miss a certain aspect in the second rak'ah, or did you completely so I'm guessing you read 1 rak'ah, you did qa'dah, and then the third rak'ah, and you did qa'dah, and you ended the salah thinking you have done the second and the fourth, but you actually haven't. I'm assuming that's what it means. In that case, you just get. Yes, it's possible. I'm quite confused here. But in that case, I'm assuming a person does this. He does 1 rak'ah, does qa'dah. Gets up, does another rak'ah, does qa'dah. Now, as he's about to do salam, he's thinking, hey, what do I do? Just get up and pray 2 more rak'ats and do sajdat as-sahwa at the end. Yes. No, it's more a little bit more complicated, just doing extra. Okay, I will ask that if you have that question, please ask on a later stage. Let's try to finish our topics for today and try to see if we have some time for some question and answers, inshallah. Because I believe the other 2 slides, there's 3 slides total that we need to cover today before we end, inshallah. 2 of the slides I believe are very, very necessary. 1 of the slides may be skipped if necessary. Inshallah, it's a short slide, and a lot of the things that we'll be discussing over here may have already been covered, by the way. However, please pay, you might have some questions as we go along, so hold the questions till the end, inshallah. Understanding what is disliked in prayer helps us perfect our worship and draw closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. While makruhat do not invalidate salah. Makruhat do not necessarily invalidate salah. Avoiding them is important on demonstrating reverence and completeness in our devotion to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This guide explores 7 categories of actions that must be avoided during prayer. Okay, what is makruh? In Islamic jurisprudence, makruh denotes an action that is disliked and be avoided. It exists between permissible and unlawful. Impact on salah. If a makruh act was done intentionally, then one must repeat the salah. Remember, if a person does a makruh action intentionally, then a person must repeat salah. If a person does it mistakenly or forgetfully, then it is regarded as a makruh and the salah will still be valid. There are some a specific certain one of these makruhs, but as we go through them, we'll understand them. Can I please humbly request some water? Yes. Jazakallah khair. leaving acts of prayer. Intentionally omitting wajib, necessary, or sunnah, encourage acts from salah diminishes the prayer's completeness. Additionally, intentionally omitting wajib invalidate the prayer. I mentioned this earlier already. Wajib intentionally left out is just like missing out on a farad, right? And intentionally omitting sunnah mu'akkada, having encouraged acts from a salah without a valid cause, remember, without a valid cause. Example, missing the entire Fajr Salah. I'll give a typical example. Jazakallah khairan. A person is praying, especially Hanafi school of thought, where we say that you can perform the Fajr Sunnahs even if the Imam has started the Salah already and you're quickly rushing through it. Now, a person feels that if I complete little bit more, which is Allahumma salli ala Muhammad and the extra supplication, I'm going to miss out the Fajr Salah. In that case, he is permitted, not only permitted, he is recommended to leave that out and say salam and go join the Imam quickly, right? So that is if he fears he's going to miss the salah completely. However, if he doesn't have excuse and for no reason, then he is doing so, then it is a cause for sajdatul sahwa to become necessary. So if a person leaves out the Durud Ibrahim for absolutely no reason, so it is just like leaving out a wajib. A person leaves out the last dua for absolutely no reason, then it will be another valid reason. A person, we see a person, I'm at the end of salah and a person is suffering, I need to go to see to him. So I can finish my at-tahiyyat, say salam and quickly attend to the person who may be in need, etc. A child falling, child about to grab onto broken glass and so on and so forth, especially for mothers or fathers if they're home. That's not there. The father will say, it's not my responsibility, it's the mother's responsibility. You have another issue, right? Cooking. It's true. It's true. Yes, it is also count. It's also a valid reason for a person. If a person thinks something on the stove will burn, will what? Will burn. Not overcook. Just now you say, I want my chicken to be perfectly tender. That's why I need to get up. No, that's not the valid reason. So, however, if we fear that it will become unedible, then yes. Or boil over, yes. Unnecessary movements and actions. Now over here, we have separated them a little bit. And fiddling in clothing and gathering garments are almost similar. However, Sahib al-Nur al-Idah, the author, the scholar from whom we're taking a lot of these points and we're stretching this according to his kitab, he separated them. And the reason for them is, one is unnecessarily done, and gathering the garments at certain parts may even be deemed what? Necessary, or something that a person normally does, even though he's not necessarily negligent. So both of these things are counted as makruh. The only time gathering of the garments may be allowed that if a person doesn't do so, it will cause him harm. For example, he may trip, etc. In that case, a person may gather his garment to ensure that it doesn't cause more problems for the salah itself. Ground wiping. We're on the carpet. I don't think we face this too much. But I've been in other countries, especially when Eid Salah happens, you forgot your janamaz, you're there, wiping the Salah. Truly, if it's not something that's going to harm you, or is going to cause you extreme difficulty, and what I mean by extreme difficulty, that means you're going to put your, let's say there's a very spiky piece of stone there, and you're going to put your head on there, you're not going to focus on that sajda at all. In that case, you are allowed to move those around. Otherwise, for the sake of, hey, I just want to keep my face neat, I just did my makeup and all those kind of reasons, those are not valid reasons to be moving the dust around. Physical habits, cracking knuckles, wiping, these are all makruh. So, however, if a person is physically, now looks like, due to cracking his knuckles, etc., looks like he's just sitting there doing this, he doesn't look like he's in salah anymore, remember, that could be regarded as amal kathir and even pull him out of salah completely. So it's something we have to be very, very cognizant about. That same thing applies. A lot of people have the habit with fiddling with their beard, just playing with their, for a long while, not for one subhanallah, not for two subhanallah, not once, just entire qa'dah, they're sitting there fiddling. And according to a large group of scholars, that is regarded as amal kathir and will potentially end their salah. I usually give the people the lowest standard, which I explained on the, I think, couple of days ago, which is that looking like he is not in salah. wants to do with, again, certain things that people tend to do with different salah, especially those people who are habitual of performing salah to tasbih, etc. Listen, we should not be counting on our fingers in any way. That is not permitted in salah. However, if a person really needs some help counting, they may press their fingers down in the position that they are in, because it doesn't look like they're making any extra movements. Making any extra movements will be regarded as makruh. Reading during the Imam's recitation. Going back to the fact that this is according to Hanafi school of thought, we are not allowed to recite behind the Imam any of the salahs. We can recite in our mind, but not, there must be no movement of the lips, or the it cannot be audible. Improper posture or body placement, hands on hips. So instead of doing this, a person stands like this. That would be regarded as makruh. Now some people may say that does not look like he's in salah at all. That will bring him out of salah. However, we find within the traditions of Sunnah of Rasulullah ﷺ that certain Sahaba came and prayed like that, Bedouins who prayed like that, and Rasulullah ﷺ did not tell them to repeat their salah. So from that, the Hanafi school of thought has drawn that a person does that particular action of standing like this, we will say that his salah is still valid. Turning from Qibla, turning the face away from the direction of the Qibla. Remember, this is the face. Turning the face away from the Qibla is makruh. A person may ask, what about turning the gaze away from the place of sajda? That is regarded as makruh tanzihu ghair awla, something that's unrecommended, is not even come into the stage of makruh tahrimi, but it is something that's clearly Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam has emphasized in multiple places, and thus we should be cognizant of that. Improper sitting and squatting position during qa'dah. Now, will it invalidate salah? No. Remember, only in sajda do 7 or 8 parts of the body have to touch the ground. In the case of the qa'dah, sitting posture, there is no part of the body that necessarily has to touch the ground. So if a person for some reason decides to lift his knees up and sit like that in salah, I don't know why he would, it will be completely contrary to the sunnah, makruh tahrimi, which means it is sinful, but it would not break the salah. Forearms on the ground. This is specifically for men, because women are supposed to put their forearms on the ground, according to the Hanafi school of thought. However, for the men, for them to put their arms down on the ground, that will be makruh tahrimi. Additional posture consideration, keeping eyes closed. This is not makruh tahrimi, this is makruh tanzihi. This is something that's unrecommended. While closing the eyes, not prohibited. It is generally disliked because Rasulullah prayed with his eyes open. We do not have a report of him closing his eyes. Looking toward the place of prostration. However, if keeping eyes open causes distraction, or closing them aids concentration significantly, scholars permit it as an exception. I, however, find that most people, even those who usually helps them to close their eyes to get concentration, if you keep it closed for too long, then you tend to start daydreaming. So I say usually use it to get concentration and then reopen them to maintain the concentration. However, every person knows his own situation and he's permitted to do as so. Objective is concentration. Reciting Quran out of order. I mentioned this already. The practice of reciting verses of surahs out of their reveal sequence is makruh. The Quran's arrangement is divinely ordained, and maintain its order during recitation is important. And prayer follow the Mushaf's order when selecting passages to recite. If you recite the verses of the Quran of the same surah in wrong order, this is makruh tahrimi. This is what? Makruh tahrimi. But if a person recites the different surahs from different parts of the Quran on different order, let's say he reads certain verses from Surah Mu'minun, which is the 18th juz. Then he recites certain verses from Surah Al-Baqarah. He's going against the order of the Quran as is known to us. However, this will be makruh tanzihi. That means غير أولى, not recommended, but in no way sinful. Exposed upper body, clothing related issues. For men, praying with the upper body unnecessarily exposed when covering is available shows disrespect. When it's available. However, a person who for some reason doesn't have his clothing, it is permissible for him to perform his salah with only his awrah covered. Draped garments. Draped clothing, sadal, this is known as sadal, like a jacket on shoulders or scarf resting on the head or shoulders, is prohibited by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, what is a technical definition? What defines sadal? Now, we understand it's prohibited by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What defines sadal? In simplest way to understand it, wearing any article of clothing contrary to the way it was meant to be worn would be regarded as sadal. Number two, wearing any article of clothing which even when worn in the way it's supposed to be worn is a very great distraction for the salah, and there is no need for it. There is no need for it. Let's say the shawl that is worn for cold winter times and for by certain people, is there a need for it? Yes, there is a need for it, and thus wearing the shawl is a need. So even though it may cause some people who are unused to, who do not know how to wear it, like me, who like a big distraction, he is allowed to wear it. It will not be regarded as sadal. Jackets are to be worn how? With hands in the sleeve, not hands out of the sleeve. But a person decides to just hang it on his shoulder and pray salah, that would be regarded as sadal, and that would be called makruh tahrimi. When it comes to the scarf, it's a very different approach, because depending on where you come from, it may be worn in different ways. If you come from certain parts of the world, it is worn as hanging down. If you go to other parts of the world, it is always worn as wrapped around. So depending, there will be some cultural implication on that. However, main thing, if it's causing disruption in your salah, then it should be avoided if it's not necessary. Images on clothing. Wearing clothing with pictures of animate beings or praying towards such images, choose plain images. This is makruh tahrimi. It will not invalidate the salah, but it will make the salah invalid. It will cause it to be makruh tahrimi. There are opinions, however, who say that praying in a place where there are pictures hanging in a respectable position or wearing animate clothing will invalidate salah. However, if a person is wearing articles of clothing with animate pictures of things which depict religious things, of non-Islamic religious things, that will invalidate the prayer. That will invalidate the prayer. Let's say for some reason a person wears a t-shirt with a cross on it and prays salah without the need. He has other t-shirts, for some reason he wore this. Or he has a picture of Jesus on there for some reason from the perception of Christians, that will render the salah invalid. Let me explain. Praying sorry, my apologies. In praying in visibly dirty, transparent, or inappropriate clothing, one must dress in respectable clothing when offering salah. For men, it's makruh to pray with the head completely uncovered without valid reason. The main reason this is makruh is because we don't find from the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we generally find indication of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam covering his head. However, many scholars will argue this is makruh tanzihi, not makruh tahrimi. The location where we pray significantly impacts our spiritual state. Avoid these locations. Filthy or disturbing areas. Now, I'll be very frank. Many times, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us confidence and courage. People seem to be sometimes scared to perform their salah in public. And sometimes when they are put into that situation, they find the most secluded area to pray. And where do they find it sometimes? Right in front of the bathroom. So that is not a recommended place, and please do not be shy unless you genuinely fear. And when we say genuine, there's actual fear that someone's going to come beat you up or shoot you or something. It is not a valid fear for you to be praying in such a place. Stolen or usurped property. Anyone who has gone through that knows about it. Highly distracting environments, unless that's the only choice you have. Seek out clean, quiet, permissible spaces that facilitate khushu', humility, and focus in your worship. States that distract the heart. These are things which cause salah to become makruh. Strong urge to relieve oneself. It is makruh tahrimi. It is what? Makruh tahrimi to perform salah. Number one, to initiate salah or to perform salah, you're supposed to break your salah immediately and go use the restroom and come back and continue. Food present while very hungry. When we talk about very hungry, it's not because the food looks really good, but you're actually hungry. So that will be a reason. Let's say you genuinely have not eaten for the whole day, and you know you're going to stand for salah, that smell or the fragrance of the food will cause your entire salah to be just disrupted. Ideally, if you're not praying with jama'ah, you rather eat first and then pray. It should not be, let's pray quickly and then namaz par lenge. What do you call it? Namaz jaldi se par ke fir khana kha lenge. No, that should be khana jaldi se kha kar namaz par lenge. That's how it should be. Praying alone in a row. this is something that is not allowed, what do you call it? Not, is makruh to perform, not allowed, but makruh to do. Rather, you should pull someone back. Now, unfortunately, the reality is most people don't know this masala. So if you pull him from the front row, he might, I don't know, slap you, hit you, punch you, or something like that, you know, or might be so. Knowing that there might be a congregation who is ignorant of the fact, you may have to think twice before calling a person from the previous row. Ideally, if you know that someone is going to come, wait for him, as long as you're not going to miss the rak'ah. But as soon as you fear missing the rak'ah, then join even if you are alone. Maintaining focus and dignity, yawning during prayer. If yawning is unavoidable, cover your mouth with right hand. Suppress the sound, make every effort to yawn silently. Return to focus, quickly refocus attention on prayer. Yawning does not break your salah, nor is it makruh tahrimi, but it should be avoided as much as possible. Why? Because Rasulullah said, the yawning comes from shaitan. Yawning comes from shaitan. The Imam's role, the Imam's role is to lead congregation. Okay, now in simple words, I'm going to summarize the whole thing. The Imam should be in the same place the rest of the congregation is. Now, how, let's say there's a separate room over here, right? And so the Imam stands in that separate room to allow everyone, then he should, at least his feet should be outside that room, even though he may be doing sajda inside, because that will show that he is part of the congregation. However, even if the Imam stands in the room, the salah will still be valid. Salah will still be valid. Oh no. Oh, very good. Listen. In our case, there's something new problem that has arisen, unfortunately, in the haram. In the past, the Imam in the haram would always stand in a position that the people on his side would always be behind him. Recently, what's happened, the Imam stands in the shade. And so the people on the top floor, and sometimes even on the side, are actually standing in front of the Imam, even on the side of the Imam. On the other sides of the Imam, it doesn't matter. So let's say the Kaaba is obviously a square shape, right? So to say. And so people standing on, let's say Imam is facing this way, the Kaaba is that way. And Imam standing this way, right? And on those side and on the other side, the Imams are right in front of the Kaaba. But on this side, as long as the people are behind the Imam, everything is valid. And if you look at the older pictures, you always see the crowd comes, and then there's a part on the side of the Imam which kind of like there's no crowd over there, because that's how it used to be maintained. But recently, Imam comes out late and he just stands it in the shade. So he doesn't come out all the way to the front, and which causes a large group of people to be in front of the Imam. So now, there is an opinion, I'll be honest, there is an opinion in the Hanbali madhab which permits for that under necessity. However, none of the other madhab across the board have this permissibility under any circumstance, and definitely not the Hanafi school of thought, and thus it would cause the people's salah to be invalid. Now, if a person has already done so, and he was unaware, because we don't know where the Imam is standing for every salah, and they say it's done for security purposes, the Imam comes on random places, because then no one can target the Imam where the Imam is supposed to be. And maybe they have a genuine reason. But whatever the reason may be, now if we did not know and we are unaware, inshallah is forgiving. However, if we can see it, then we have to make an adjustment and move to a place where we're behind the Imam, even if it means missing some rak'at. So if I see that I'm standing on the side and the Imam's praying right there behind me, then I need to miss a rak'at and go back a couple of safs and join the saf, so that my salah is valid. Yeah. I'll try. Inshallah. Okay. Last one that I felt that it must be done today. The other one, if we don't get time, I'm going to try to finish up by 45 to 50, inshallah, and end after, inshallah. If we can finish both of them till then, alhamdulillah. If not, inshallah, in a future session, we will cover the part that I felt we should do. The next one is Muftī Tawṣīf. Muftī, things that invalidate prayer. This typically should not take too long, because most of us understand, in simple rule, anything that seems to be contradictory to salah will invalidate the prayer. So let's say a person's wudu breaks, his salah is invalid. He has to restart the salah. Right? Speaking unnecessary speech or response during prayer. Speaking, now, I put it very vaguely, unnecessary speech. In simple words, anything that cannot be said in salah. Can du'as be said salah? In some part of salah? Yes. Du'as as in my Arabic du'as from Sunnah and the Quran can be said. So let's say a person says a random du'a. Let's say a person says, Allahumma inni dhalamtu nafsi dhulman kathira. Where he's supposed to be reciting Surah Fatiha. Right? So his salah will still be valid. He'll have to make sajda to sahur, but his salah will still be valid. Why? Because he has delayed the one of the wajibat, and delaying a wajib necessitates sajdatul sahw. However, speaking or in any language, including in Arabic, anything which would be regarded as a conversation to oneself or to another person would invalidate salah. So let's say a person is thinking about this grocery list in salah, and I start thinking, and now he's trying to focus on his grocery list and say, we have butter and he says these things, his salah is invalid, right? In the same way, a person comes and says, Assalamu alaikum, and he says, Wa alaikum assalam. Because he's responding to a person, it'll invalidate salah. However, if a person says, Assalamu alaikum himself, for whatever reason, because the word Assalamu alaikum exists in salah, true or false? Because of tahiyyat. So his salah will still be valid as long as he was not speaking to someone else. So his intention really matters. And his intention is only known by whom? Himself. It's on him and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I can't judge it, another person, but he will have to judge himself. Reading, looking at, and reading from text outside prayer. Now this is important to understand because some of the other madhahib do allow reciting the Quran, looking into the Quran. The Hanafi school of thought does not allow it. The Hanafi school of thought does not allow it. It will break a person's salah. Eating. The only time a person may be permitted to do so, let's say there is an Arab brother who newly became Muslim. So he's able to read Arabic, or a person knows English. He's able to read the transliteration of the Quran in Arabic. So he may do so until he learns the Quran. Even that, scholars of the past have recommended he rather say Subhanallah, which is an easier phrase to learn, rather than looking in the Quran and reading. Eating. Sorry. Consuming anything or keeping items in the mouth. Movement, excessive actions or certain positions, najasa, awra. Each one of these will be discussed in detail. Now, let's say what breaks salah in terms of speech. Saying anything not Quran or dua unnecessarily. Making sounds like ah or oh out loudly, deliberately. Coughing or clearing throat unnecessarily. Remember, coughing or clearing throat unnecessarily. What do you mean necessary? As long as the person has some kind of feeling in his throat, and due to that and he's doing it, his salah is still valid. However, if a person, let's say his friend is playing over there, and he's like, and there's like a whole joke going on amongst the youngsters in salah, then all those youngsters' salah is all broken. Making dua not as a response to external events. Making dua not as response. What breaks salah? Sorry. Making dua, it says not. It's supposed to be as a response. I apologize. Making dua as response. Allahumma salli wa sallam. To external events. Responding to greetings or saying salam, saying bismillah or alhamdulillah in response to external events, making dua in non-Arabic or using phrases not found in the Quran or Sunnah, laughing loud enough to hear yourself. Laughing loud enough to hear yourself. If you laugh loud enough for other people to hear you, not only is your salah broken, but your wudu is also broken, according to Hanafi school of thought. What does not break salah? Now, I don't know sorry, my thing went off the slide a little bit. I'm just going to go through it. What does not break salah over here? Involuntary sounds during recitation. Sometimes involuntary sound, a certain extra sound may come out. That is fine. However, if a person leading Taraweeh, sometimes having the Hufaz, they're thinking, and you're like, so that will invalidate salah. That is not part of salah. Something to be cognizant about for this Hufaz. Saying Alhamdulillah after sneezing or your own, not as a response to another. Saying Astaghfirullah spontaneously. Rather, certain du'as, including Astaghfirullah, is actually recommended within prayer when certain verses come. So for example, Allah says in the Quran, فَاسْتَغْفِرُوا إِنَّهُ هُوَ الْغَفُورُ الرَّحِيمُ. Especially in Nafil Salah, you are actually recommended to say Astaghfirullah. Or where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَاسْتَعِذْ بِاللَّهِ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ الرَّجِيمِ, you're recommended to say أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says فَسَبِّحْ بِاسْمِ رَبِّكَ الْعَظِيمِ, you can say Subhana Rabbi al-Azim inside Salah, especially in nafal salah, especially in nafal salah. In farz salah, it is recommended not to say so. Recommend reading prohibitions. Looking into the Quran or in text where I discussed this, for the muqtadi follower, if you give a correction by reading and the imam accepts the salah of the imam, and as a result the entire congregation is invalidated. Now I want to explain something, because we live in a very, very mixed place where different madhahib exist. Now you have to understand that there are certain rulings which are Hanafi, which will apply to all the Hanafis in the congregation. However, it will not apply to the Shafi'is. I'm unfortunately unaware to the rulings of the Malikis and the Hanbalis. For the Shafi'is, their salah in Jama'ah works slightly different than the Hanafis' salah in Jama'ah. So if the imam's salah is even broken, the Shafi'is can actually just carry on their salah, right? And then complete their salah. So if your salah, the imam's salah breaks, after he has started the salah in a valid manner, as long as the imam started the salah as a valid salah, and the imam's wudu breaks, or the imam reads something wrong, or the imam just for whatever reason breaks the salah, or something like this happened where a person looking in the Quran gives a correction and the imam takes his salah is broken, the Shafi'is could care less. They'll just carry on their salah as if you don't exist, right? So you might be saying, what is this guy doing? Let him pray his salah, right? So that is something they can do. That's part of their madhab. However, we as Hanafis have to understand, Imam's salah is broken, my salah is broken. Because me and the Imam are together in this congregation. So whatever happens to the Imam, happens to me, applies to me as well. Just give me 1 moment. Sorry. Assalamualaikum. Amma te program maskan asi. Program maskan asi. Assalamualaikum. Sound. Na all program. Sound. Jaina mo ang program ta korteছি. Sorry. Okay, eating rules. Consume anything that salah breaks it immediately. So anything going into the mouth, simple words, anything going into the mouth from outside the mouth will break the salah. Simple as that. Anything already in the mouth from before salah, for example, Ramadan. In Ramadan, a person rushes after iftar and he starts maghrib salah. Now he feels bits of food coming in his mouth from between his teeth, etc. As long as it is less than the amount of a chickpea, uncooked chickpea. As long as less than amount of uncooked chickpea. Now you don't have to necessarily take it out and look at it now, obviously it's over, so measure it. But general idea, hey, it's a very small, salah is fine. I can feel a big piece, or there's so many pieces in the mouth, all together is definitely bigger than chickpea, then you should restart your salah. You know that your salah is invalid if you swallow it. If you swallow it. If you just push it to the side of the mouth, it is makruh, the salah is not invalid. It's makruh, the salah is not invalid. In the same way, if you have, now over here it mentions a few things. Sweet items whose flavor is swallowed breaks salah. Continuing to chew after a flavor is gone breaks salah. Large objects restricting recitation breaks salah. Swallowing items larger than an uncooked chickpea breaks salah. Small objects not restricting recitation, makruh, but does not break the salah. That is, if it's the mouth, as long as you don't swallowing has to be chickpea size, right? Movement and position, the principle of amal kathir. We discussed this already pretty much. Again, in simple words, consider intent. Would someone watching from a distance think you are praying? Is the movement necessary, or can it be avoided? Now, can it be avoided? What is the example of something that can be avoided? Cannot be avoided. You see a scorpion. Now, either kill it or break your salah. You have two choices. If you think you're strong enough or you're fast enough to kill a scorpion before it attacks you, you are allowed to move how much ever you need to move to kill the scorpion and carry on salah. Or a snake. You're also permitted to just break the salah and carry on. And then repeat the salah later on. Maintain direction. Continue prayer. Moving location is permitted if chest remains facing the qibla. During the whole ordeal of killing the scorpion, you have to ensure that chest stays towards the qibla. So you can move sideways, but you cannot necessarily turn around. Najasa and awra. Najasa. Salah is invalid if impurity spreads. And if it remains in its original place, salah is valid. Let's say, while you're praying in salah, your son comes and jumps on you and he has a sharp object on his hand. And so he scratches you. Due to the scratch, if small tiny beads of blood appear and they stay in that spot, doesn't increase like 2, 3 drop or even 10, 15, and they're just kind of like stuck there. It's not increasing, it's not flowing, none of that. Your salah is valid. Why? Because no level of impurity came. Together with that, a child comes, and child himself has a soiled diaper. You can smell it. You know the child's diaper is soiled. In that case, you picking up the child, even though picking up children during salah is permitted, for men and women. Rasulullah ﷺ has done it so explicitly, there can be no doubt about it, that is permissible. However, if the child has soiled clothing with either urine or stool, then to pick up the child will not be permitted. Why? Because now you're picking up najasa onto yourself. That will not be permitted. However, if an item is such that it is enclosed completely and internally it may contain something, however, externally the only way that can come out, if the external part is completely destroyed, then that is fine. Let's say you happen to have an egg, or you don't even know this possibly. Another example is egg. Certain eggs happen to contain blood in them. Now you have that egg in your pocket for whatever reason, your salah will be valid. Number one, I don't think you will know there's blood in that unless you're some kind of expert at the field. Number two, even though you do know, the only way that will come out if the object itself is destroyed. Awrah. Now, this is very important for everyone. Men, and the reason I say it's very important because despite all of us knowing there's so much negligence found in it. And it's very sad how much negligence is found with regard to awrah. We find countless people praying in the salah, people who are regarded as regular musallis, and this applies to them. Body parts designated as awrah for men, from navel to knee, is not much for us. For a man, is not much at all. But yet we find those parts to be an opening up during salah. Salah is invalidated if 1/4 of an awrah limb becomes uncovered. Remember, just because you can't tell where the navel is from the back, it doesn't mean that whole part is not uncovered. The navel, if you compare the navel to the back up from the back side, it's quite high up. So if that entire area is visible all the way to where? That to I don't know what you say, the crack on the buttocks, then you know it's significant. That's 1/4 of the back side that is open, which will invalidate your prayer. And subhanallah, there's something to understand as well, that the opening of the awrah to the extent that is now visible to the other people is sinful, because you are maybe not deliberately, but you're definitely dressing in a way which puts you in a condition that could be other people are falling into what would be called sinful. Salah is invalidated if 1/4 of an awrah limb becomes uncovered for the duration of reciting 3 tasbihat. If you are doing entire sajda, that's the entire rukn, true or false? Whether you read the tasbih 3 times or you don't read the tasbih 3 times, that is the entire rukn, and thus the entire salah is invalid. This also applies to our women folk, that if that part of the body is open. Now, open, remember we talked about that whether it is so tight that the shape of the body is visible, or someone also brought it up, that sometimes men and women tend to wear very sheer clothing for some reason. And so it is because sometimes, maybe unknowingly, some of the white jubbas, when seen in a certain light, everything is visible. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive the brother. Once I was in Houston, went for a Quran khatam on 27th night, mashallah, right? And the brother's wearing all black. But wallahi, even though there was 3 layers of black, you can see his private genitals clearly. Through all 3. And I don't know, maybe no one had the courage to tell him, brother, please, like we can see everything, so please go change. But that's how the case was with that brother. But not to that extent, but many people sometimes, especially when remember, many people when wearing white trousers is actually quite visible. That's why we should ensure if we're wearing white trousers, shalwar, kameez, etc., that we have either a kameez on top which covers till the knee, or we have a jubba which covers till the knee, so that the awrah below is not visible. Believe that covers the mufsidat. Okay. Okay. Inshallah, 5 more minutes. Let's try to cover the last one that I wanted to cover. Okay. Okay, let's see. Let me see if for Imam Dhuhr Asr Salam I'm allowed to read the Quran. Can we break a salah if the food is okay? Subhanallah. So someone asked the burning food masala. I think I answered that. If I'm praying behind the Imam in Dhuhr or Asr Salah, am I allowed to read Quran, or at least in my mind to keep focus on Salah? You are allowed to read in your mind. As we mentioned, that no movement of the lips and no verbalization. That means it cannot be audible. Is praying with glasses on makruh? No, it is not makruh as long as it does not prevent you from doing the posture of sajda correctly. However, if your glasses are such that they do prevent you from doing so, and you do not need them during salah, if you do not need them during salah, then you should take them. You will be required to take them off. A position of where you may need to wear it. Let's say you're in a place where there's a lot of insects, etc., which could be harmful to you, and now you need to have a visible eye as to what is harmful approaching to you. A person may need to keep the glasses on. In that case, then it would be fine. I'm praying behind the Imam. Okay. Can you wear headphones in your ears while praying, like earbuds or the Bluetooth earpieces? As long as it does not prevent us from praying salah, or it does not become an impediment from any posture in salah, it is valid, it is fine. However, ideally speaking, if you have earbuds, if a person calls, what's going to happen? It's going to start around. It's not only sounding, even if it's on silent, it's going to sound in your heads. You are just setting yourself up for distraction for salah. So ideally, no. Can we perform salah wearing clothing that have logos of animals, though small in size, normally logos of branded clothes? So now, if any picture is so small and any clothing that if you had to put on the ground and you have to stand up and you look at it, you can't really tell what the picture is, that kind of picture is on. For that, it has to be quite small. It has to be very small. Yes, sometimes logos are that small. However, if it's larger than that, then no, you're not allowed to keep it. Will be makruh tahrimi. Now, you have what we know as silhouettes. So silhouettes are shapes of animate objects which are, you can tell. If you can clearly tell that it is an animal, certain animal, for example, eyes are outlined, etc., that silhouette will still be regarded as a animate picture. However, if it's such a silhouette is just a very general, no eyes on it, no mouth on it, no nose on it, then let's say ears and maybe, I don't know, like a beard for a wolf or dog, I don't know, for some reason, or a goat picture with only horns and maybe beard coming down, just thinking of random examples, then those would be permissible, yet unadvisable. Yes. What to do if your wool? Yeah.
Number one, number two, and if we have pictures of, let's say, animals that are haram animals.
Pigs. Yes. No, so like we mentioned, if it's that small, it will be allowed. If it's not that small, then it will not be allowed. If you can clearly see it is. If it's a silhouette, irrespective of what type of animal it is, it will not be. However, if there is something, remember, if there is something, a silhouette or an animate object, so irrespective of the size of it, if it has any kind of religious significance, it will be haram. Not only makruh tahrim, it will be haram to have it on while praying. There's one more thing you added there. You can cover it, yes. Budweiser, etc. That will be. Yes. The polo one is a silhouette. It's a very, very fine silhouette. Yeah. So again, not recommended, but if it's there, it's fine. It's one of those things that are much more difficult to avoid. When it comes to Budweiser, etc., propagating haram objects, it will be makruh tahrimi, because you are, number one, wearing something that is promoting haram, so you're wearing it in salah. However, because it doesn't have any facial features, etc., it will be, salah will still be valid, said with sin. Yes. One moment. Are logos in the clothing fine, like Nike or outline silhouette of the Puma logo? I believe I answered that. The Puma logo is a silhouette, has no eyes or nose, etc. Does wearing jeans and t-shirts allowed to perform salah, as they are considered tights? And they're not always tights, with all due respect. It's fairly, I think a lot of people wear jeans and pants which are not too tight. The body shape doesn't necessarily show. However, if it is tight, for example, what they call tight jeans, yes, that will render salah impermissible, especially around unless you have some another garment on top. For example, you untuck your shirt and the shirt tucked, covers the parts, so it doesn't seem very, very tight. Sometimes, even though something may initially, now, we also have to consider sometimes that there's some people Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made them bigger than others. And so the articles of clothing, despite them trying to do what? Be as untight as possible, is tight. So that is something that we have to be considerate of. Those people will not fall under this because they are trying their best to be as loose as possible. But in the position Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made their body, etc., they cannot do otherwise. Yes. No, the Imam as well should avoid it. In the Hanafi school of thought, Imam should avoid anything extra in the Farz Salah. However, in Nafal Salah, even if you're leading, even in Taraweeh Salah, actually, you are permitted to say it. However, we don't want to cause more confusion now. Just now you started to say Astaghfirullah loudly in the entire this congregation is thinking, what just happened right now? People are not used to it. Yes. Yes. Yes, should be avoided in the Hanafi school of thought, yes. Yes, and anyone can, no. No, yes, definitely makruh. So the fuqaha have actually written it because they feel it's tahqir of the amal. Okay, now if a person genuinely does it for a place where people don't know, let's say there's a lot of ignorance in a place, and if people are not used to imams leading with sajda verses, and now if you're going to lead it, there might be some people like the ladies and the ladies side, they don't know what's going on. It's going to cause more of a confusion, and to avoid that confusion, he does it. Allah knows the intentions of every person, and thus he avoids it. It's completely fine. However, if a person does it for absolutely no valid reason, just because he doesn't feel like doing an extra sajda, then that is tahqir of deen, and that will be regarded makruh. However, the salah will be valid. Salah will be valid. Jazakallah khairan. Okay, both. Okay, what is regarded as speed reading for any posture? Any posture, speed reading is when the letters of that specific wording are not uttered clearly. So, for example, if I say Subhanallah, so no one knows, if any person listening to it will know that they don't know there's a ba properly in there. And so, as long as every letter is uttered correctly, then it is proper. Anything faster than that will be regarded as too fast. Anything slower than that is recommended, and anything too slow where it becomes where it becomes, let's say, the muqtadis are waiting so long now, they can burdensome, jazakallah, burdensome, then that will become too long. Right? Yes. No. No, so for example, if we studied the tajweed, ayn is actually not supposed to take any time. So nevertheless,